So I've been recently growing more and more enamoured with Vinegar Syndrome, a small US-based company that specialise in raiding the kind of drive-in movie theatres and CD archive backrooms that your parents warned you off going to. Obviously, being based in the UK, and with the risk of import charges being an absolute bitch to balance out, if I'm buying off them, I'm buying in bulk. And I recently decided to take advantage of their drive-in theatre series during one of their sales. These are movies that were typically shown at drive-in movie theatres that have now been restored and re-released as double feature DVDs here. The quality is a bit sketchy in honesty, both in terms of the PQ and in terms of the quality of the actual films being used in general, but as a cheap and cheerful way to package up movies that are maybe not the best picture quality, or are maybe best suited to the double feature format, this is a great little idea. And it helps bring back to life a niche subgenre of cinema's past, the low, no-budget independent picture. And so to kick things off, we have Death Force, also known as Vengeance is Mine, a 1978 Blaxploitation action movie that's about 92% padding and 100% badass action. And I'm not kidding with that assertion. This film is 2 hours long, and if you took the padding out, it'd probably be about an hour to an hour and 15, and that's just trimming the fat. If I was being brutal, this thing wouldn't touch 45 minutes. The film follows Doug Russell, a soldier returning from conflict with his army buddies who are on a stopover flight back to the US that's grounded in the Philippines overnight. While they stop over, the guys have some shady business to attend to. In order to make a little bit of extra money, the three friends have agreed to break into an army storage base and steal a casket full of gold bars, which they then intend to sell to some Chinese businessmen in exchange for 2 suitcases full of cash. This goes without a hitch and all's well until Doug's 2 army buddies decide to double-cross him, as Doug's a family man who would have got in the way of the other 2 guys doing more nefarious deeds, and also it means there's more money for them. So they gang up on Doug, slit his throat and dump him in the ocean. An undisclosed amount of time passes and Doug washes up on a desert island where he's found by 2 abandoned members of the Japanese Imperial Army, who take him back to their makeshift cave house and nurse him back to health. Meanwhile, our ne'er-do-well friends of Doug return home and use their ill-gotten gains to set up a racket business, intimidating shop owners and taking out the competition. They also make sure to inform Doug's wife that he's dead, and because one of Doug's friends really likes Doug's wife, he tries it on with her for the rest of the film for good measure. Doug, meanwhile, regains consciousness and finds out that the 2 Japanese soldiers on the island were abandoned there in either 1951 or 1961, and have basically been awaiting rescue or further orders. One of the soldiers is also either a full-on shogun samurai or is trained in the way of the samurai. It's never fully clarified. Doug becomes deeply interested in learning the ways of the samurai, and after much persuasion, the shogun reluctantly agrees to teach Doug his techniques. The next hour or so of the film could best be summed up as the bad guys in the film slowly start to take control of the city, even going as far as getting Doug's wife fired from her job as a singer in a local bar so as to make her dependent on the creep who tried to bump off her husband, an avenue she refuses repeatedly. Doug, meanwhile, goes through several training montages and eventually is approved as a true samurai. At this point, well over an hour into the movie, the film shifts tone, and over the course of a 10-minute window, one of the 2 Japanese soldiers randomly carks it, and a Colombian boat containing several soldiers turns up to take the island as part of a reconnaissance mission. They find the dead soldier properly buried and assume that the island is inhabited, and after an initial search they find Doug and the samurai. They capture Doug, but the samurai escapes. I don't want to spoil what happens next, because otherwise I'll give up literally all the reasons to watch this film, but the long and short of it is that the Colombian soldiers offer to take Doug back to the US, which he accepts. They gloss over the massive boat trip from the seas of the Philippines to the US, but Doug gets back and quickly befriends a cab driver called Gamora. The pair form a network whereby the cab driver passes on info about crimes being committed to Doug, and Doug uses the way of the samurai to kick some ass and ask questions later. Though his main target is taking down his army buddies who double-crossed him. Reunited with his family and reinvigorated, Doug begins his quest for retribution. He's armed and dangerous, and he's got 2 targets in mind. As mentioned, this movie is 1 hour and 51-ish minutes long. That's only slightly shorter than Raging Bull, which is ludicrous given that, as I say, a massive chunk of this is padding. It's stretched so thin as to almost become ludicrous, but I will say this. While there is a ton of padding, at least it's not boring padding. Well, I didn't think it was boring padding, for the most part. Towards the final act I was clock watching, but the first 2 acts where the padding is most prominent at least had the decency to make it entertaining. In fact, that's one thing I can say about this script. It's not a dull one by any stretch. I mean, for a blaxploitation film it is very middle of the road, but it didn't completely bore me. It's a B feature, a film that warms the audience up to a better movie. I could easily see this being played alongside something like Coffee, or maybe They Call Her One Eye, or something like that. Within the historical context of its purpose, it serves its job from a script standpoint. However, devoid of that context, it would be very easy to see why people would maybe be a bit bored by this one. The script comes courtesy of 3 writers, Robert E. Waters, Cirio H. Santiago, and Howard R. Cohen. Cohen only has 2 writing credits, this film and Alley Cat, which I really should look into at some point. He was mainly a producer that was responsible for several softcore erotica flicks. Waters, by contrast, has 23 writing credits and is probably best known for having written the Deathstalker movies, alongside heavy involvement in several animated kids' ventures, including multiple episodes of the Care Bears TV series and the Rainbow Bright TV show and movie. Both Cohen and Waters died in 1999 at the ages of 67 and 56 respectively. Santiago has 19 writing credits, most of which were also movies he directed and or produced. Which you may scoff at until you realise that he also has 100 directing credits. And these aren't mainly shorts or TV movies. Oh no, these are fully fledged feature directing credits. Yes, they're mainly straight action thrillers and erotic action movies that probably never got further than the local drive-in theatre, but in a career that spanned from the 1960s until his death in 2008, and beyond, as his last film was actually only completed and released posthumously in 2014, it's expansive and really quite impressive. As far as the direction and cine for this film go, again, middle of the road is probably the best word for it. It's not terrible, but it does have a very specific look and tone that's highly prevalent in the 70s and 80s low, no-budget studio community. At its best, it scrapes by on what could probably just about be called professional. At its worst, it's a drab and very uninspiring affair, though honestly, it's more bad than good. We're not looking at a masterpiece here. It's a reasonable attempt. Measure your expectations is my advice, and as I always say, that'll do, rarely ever does. Same goes for the soundtrack really. It sounds like late 60s TV scoring, only this is a late 70s movie. It's all orchestral sweeps, nothing standout, nothing memorable. I'd hazard a guess that it's library music, but I can't say for sure, it just sounds very generic. Finally, the performances were the thing that pretty much kept me watching. Had this film had generic or even worse boring acting in it, I'd have probably turned off by the hour mark. But as it stands, the cast are lively and charismatic. James Iglehart is a fantastic leading man as Doug in this, and I found he delivers just the right balance of stern and straight-talking over-the-topness that's required for this genre of movie. Leon Isaac Kennedy is also fantastic as McGee, offering a subdued performance at first, only for it to give way to a much more panicked and extreme performance as he realises that his sweet arrangement is quite quickly falling apart. That made him pretty much utterly watchable from about the 30-minute mark onwards. I also can't go any further without mentioning both Joe Mari and Jun-Yi as the 2 Japanese soldiers. Jun-Yi offers some much needed comic relief, even if his death is both out of the blue and deeply out of place. Frankly, he's a delight, while Mari goes above and beyond, giving a genuinely impressive, utterly watchable and totally memorable performance as our samurai soldier, who places honour above all else. Seriously, I'd argue these guys are both the main reason to watch this movie. As mentioned before, it's very important to remember the context of this film, both in terms of its place in history and its place within the movie-making ecosystem. This was probably 3 to 6 months' work for a crew and cast. It was part of a film-making system that would cookie-cut together movies like this one in one-size-fits-all packages aimed at getting it out the door and getting customers on seats as quickly as possible. They'd aim to break even, and any profits would go into making the next movie. That's the best they would hope for. As a result, films like this were churned out en masse through the 70s, 80s and early 90s, before this cine system split into two very distinct communities: the shot-on-video crowd and the low-budget but still in control of the studio group. But for a period of about 20 years, both these groups worked together, and this was how small studios stayed afloat, by rapidly firing out B pictures and hoping that they got picked up outside of the city they were based in. Death Force did have a UK VHS release, or at least I've found a trailer for a VHS release online, but it's been remastered using the best available materials and released here by Vinegar Syndrome. I'm not going to lie, the print's in pretty bad shape. It's full of scratches, tram lines, there's breathing visible in the film stock, and several points of discoloration. This set also has no extras for this film, it's literally just the movie cleaned up as best as it can be and then dumped on a disc. As far as I'm aware, it's never had and isn't currently planned to have any kind of a Blu-ray release, but in fairness, it's impressive that this film survives in a film-based format at all at this point. Death Force isn't a must-watch, it's overly long and really could have benefited from a trim and some more exploitation elements to keep it light and punchy. However, if you're looking to capture that old-time drive-in movie theatre experience, look no further, you've found the perfect film to complement any of your Grindhouse movie collection. While it is overlong, it's still entertaining, and given the cheap price of the collection, I'd say if you like Blaxploitation cinema, you may well get a pretty good kick out of this one.